Hello everyone, and I'm Autobot Sonic the Telltale Gamer, bringing latest everything Telltale games, Transformers, and more. For today's review of Transformers Cyberverse, we're going to be looking at Transformers Cyberverse Season 3, Episode 23, Rack and Ruin and Ratchet. Now, if you were to tell me at the start of this season, I had a little Cyberverse bingo card of saying what every episode of Cyberverse is going to be, a Rack and Ruin centered episode was not one that would have been on my Cyberverse bingo card, but honestly, this is probably, I keep saying like, oh, this episode Cyberverse is the best filler episode, this one's the best filler episode. Honestly, this is without a doubt the best filler episode of Season 3 of Cyberverse so far. I absolutely love I didn't think episode centering on Rack and Ruin as the main character would be so hilarious, but honestly, it really is. But also does give us some nice little insight as to what will happen in these last 3 episodes of Season 3. So, honestly, it's a really fun filler episode, and definitely one I can enjoy. So we're going to go ahead and see everything this episode did right and what it did wrong. Episode 23, Rack and Ruin and Ratchet, starts off with Optimus and Hot Rod surveying the, on this big map of Cybertron, essentially just looking over Megatron's half of Cybertron, with the two of them being skeptical over what exactly Megatron is planning. Because if you remember, back in the end of the universe arc, Megatron agreed to peace on Cybertron as long as the Decepticons got half of Cybertron to themselves, and eventually there would become a point when Megatron would need something from Optimus. And we did see bits and pieces of this in previous episodes, specifically back in Enemy Line, when B was sneaking into the Decepticon half of Cybertron to go and try and save Windblade. He ended up running into Astro Train and Megatron having a conversation about having to deal with some other one that was apparently Astro Train's old master. Now, of course, I know who the other one is thanks to spoilers, but I'm not going to state exactly who that is right just now until we get to that review, but just for anyone who doesn't know, that the other one is also the name of the final episode of Season 3, so we'll definitely be seeing probably what exactly this other one is, even though I know what it is by the end of that. So anyway, there's just more emphasis on that this episode, as Optimus and Hot Rod are just skeptical that Megatron truly wants peace on Cybertron, so they've sent a couple of Autobots into Decepticon territory to just do scouting missions to see if they can find any secret plans that Megatron has. So they check in with RC, Whirl, and Jetfire, who are each running their own reconnaissance missions inside the Decepticon half of Cybertron. And while Whirl and RC can't find anything, Jetfire is currently surveying until he seems to find some sort of outpost in like the desert area of Cybertron. What appears to be, and we'll later find out is in fact is, an unspaced gun just fires out into the sky at Jetfire, and it hits his wings, causing his wings to just disappear and crash land into the desert. And that's where the start of this episode picks up, with Rack and Ruin just back to stacking Energon cubes again, because remember back in Season 2, that was a running gag in Season 2. They would always either finish stacking or get close to finishing stacking a bunch of Energon cubes, but it would always get knocked over. So that trend continues in this episode, where they're in the middle of the ship, just finally finishing up stacking a bunch of Energon crates, until suddenly the ship that they're in takes off, and then we found out that Ratchet is piloting the ship, who is under orders from Optimus to go ahead and save Jetfire from whatever trouble he's got himself into. And I'm just gonna say this right here. I get this is like a rescue mission, but why have Ratchet go on this mission by himself? You're having the sole medic on your team run a rescue mission deep into Decepticon territory. I mean, I understand having Ratchet come as support, but just have him go alone? I don't know, that just seems a little bit weird in my opinion. If you're going to have Ratchet expecting a fight at some point, just feels weird. But anyway, Rack and Ruin notice that Ratchet is flying the shuttle, and Ratchet explains to them that he's on this mission to go ahead and save Jetfire. So we get this funny moment where Rack and Ruin's just pestering Ratchet while they fly over to where Jetfire is, and it reminds me a lot of this one episode of Transformers Prime. I think it was Season 2. It was a Season 2 or Season 3 episode. I think it was called Triage. It was the one where Wheeljack and Ratchet were dealing with Soundwave, and Wheeljack's just annoying Ratchet while they're both flying inside his ship, and it reminds me a lot of that, in my opinion. But Rack and Ruin obviously is on a totally different character from Wheeljack, but the dynamic is still there, kind of same. Eventually, Rack and Ruin and Ratchet, that's got mouthfuls, end up making their way to Jetfire, who exclaims that he has no legs. As we see, his wings are back, but he's got no legs. But by the time he gets to Rack and Ruin and Ratchet, he's just walking around now perfectly fine, but he's got no head. But eventually, his head does suddenly reappear, and it turns out apparently that the unspaced gun that shot Jetfire is apparently like an unstable one that essentially is causing random parts of his body to disappear into unspace and come back after a while. So Ratchet needs a stabilizer from the ship to go ahead and basically resync his body back to the current dimension. So while Rack and Ruin go out to go ahead and grab the stabilizer for Ratchet, Jetfire and Ratchet run into Astro Train and Dead End, who just park in the middle of the desert after making like a crash landing or something, and Astro Train explains to Dead End that apparently they need to prepare for the other one coming soon, and again, we'll find out more about the other one in the Season 3 finale, which is also called the other one. But while they're talking, they do notice that Ratchet and Jetfire are watching them, so Astro Train just immediately charges Ratchet and Jetfire, which, by the way, is terrifying considering just how huge Astro Train is in Cyberverse. He ends up running towards them both and just snatches them. This is a really cool thing that he snatches them up in one hand, but then transforms like halfway into the roll into his shuttle form, so that it basically traps Ratchet and Jetfire inside of him, while Dead End hops in from behind, and the four of them end up heading back to the base that we saw the unspaced gun in the beginning of this episode. So now Rack and Ruin are on their own, just confused as to why Ratchet and Dead End are missing, but they see Astro Train leaving, so they decide to go ahead and plot a rescue mission to go ahead and save them. And honestly, I didn't think seeing a Rack and Ruin by themselves would be so entertaining, but honestly, with how stupid they both are, I honestly love it. And Jeremy Levy absolutely kills it as Rack and Ruin. Just, this is the most we've gotten to see the character for across all 3 seasons, and honestly, this makes me think that Jeremy Levy should have gotten a lot more time as Rack and Ruin, because he's hilarious as him. So while Rack and Ruin are trying to be stealthy by crawling in the middle of the desert to the Decepticon base, they are spotted by Shadow Striker and Soundwave, who are also spying on the base, not because they're guarding it, but because they don't know about it either and want to know about what exactly is going on there. So they capture Rack and Ruin, pretending to be involved with it for a bit, just talking, ordering Rack and Ruin to try and explain what's going on, why they're going into the base. So Rack and Ruin tries not to talk about it, but he ends up talking about it anyway, like accidentally. So, well, after noticing that Rack and Ruin know nothing about the Decepticon base as well, Shadow Striker and Soundwave just let Rack and Ruin go and decide to let him go in to check it out first. So Rack and Ruin pick their guns back up and head into the base, where they find that Jetfire and Ratchet are both being tied up by Astro Train and Dead End, prepared to be used as test subjects for the unspaced gun, saying that it's the only way they'll be able to defeat the other one. So while they get ready to try it out on Ratchet first, which first off, while this is happening, Jetfire still has random parts of his body being blipped out into the unspace from the unspaced gun, and he's bound by his hands. So what if his hands just blipped out for a second? He'd be free then. So I don't understand why, like, they didn't just have his whole body restrained. I guess, like, maybe put something around his torso, since that's really the only part of him that probably wouldn't fade away. But it just seems odd they have his arms restrained when what if, even though it doesn't happen, what if the unspaced gun made his arms disappear, and so he'd just be free then? But so that's like my major con with this episode, but it's not really like a big thing. It's maybe like a half point off. Oh, otherwise an almost perfect episode. So while Rack and Ruin see from above Astro Train and Dead End's ready to test the unspaced gun out on Ratchet, Rack and Ruin just jump down to try and attack Astro Train by just shooting both their guns at Astro Train's face, but it's just not affecting him at all. He doesn't even notice that they're shooting him until he just turns around and sees Rack and Ruin on his shoulder, so he ends up grabbing him off his shoulder and throws him accidentally into the controls for the unspaced gun, and that causes it to go out of control, just shooting everything in the room. So it's at this point Rack and Ruin are still trying to fight Astro Train, just shooting at him with their guns, and eventually pulling out these 2 little sledgehammers and just pounding at his ankle, which is honestly really cute and hilarious. But while the unspaced gun's going out of control, it does manage to shoot the little, like, table that Ratchet's being restrained on, so he's able to get free and fights with Dead End while he gets a stabilizer from Rack and Ruin to cure Jetfire of his unspaced condition. At the same time, though, Shadow Striker and Soundwave end up getting in as well when the unspaced gun basically deletes the main door, sends the main door of the facility to unspace. And while Astro Train's trying to get Shadow Striker and Soundwave out of the base, the Unspace Gun actually ends up shooting Astro Train, sending the entirety of him into Unspace. And so Astro Train's just floating around in Unspace amongst all the other debris from the laboratory or works warehouse for a bit, stating that the Unspace Gun finally works before suddenly transforming and generating a multiversal portal to take him back to Cybertron. Afterwards, Astro Train returns to the warehouse just as Rack and Ruin, Ratchet, and Jetfire escape, and he states to Dead End that the Unspace Gun is ready and that they'll be able to take down the other one when they arrive in Cybertron. So after that, the episode just ends with Rack and Ruin and Ratchet and Jetfire, try saying that 5 times fast, flying away from the warehouse with Optimus congratulating Rack and Ruin on saving both Ratchet and Jetfire. And honestly, it again, at the end it's a little bit abrupt, but I do love just how this episode came about, and the whole having Rack and Ruin play as a major character throughout this episode was something I never knew I needed, and I really enjoyed it. And so that was my review of Transformers Cyberverse Season 3, Episode 23, Rack and Ruin and Ratchet. If I had to rate this episode, easily it would get a 9.5 out of 10. Honestly, the best filler episode of Season 3 so far. I absolutely love having Rack and Ruin as a main character. Makes me wish we saw more of him through Season 2 instead of just being a joke character. I will say, though, it was a little bit odd that when Jetfire was being restrained by Astro Train and Dead Ends, that they didn't think that his arms might have just been phased out through the Unspace Gun and just could have been broken out like that. But other than that, though, we get a lot of cool stuff with Dead End and Astro Train about the other one who will be coming soon. A great interaction with Shadow Striker and Soundwave with Rack and Ruin, and then just Rack and Ruin being his own dumb self was just hilarious to see, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with these last 3 episodes. That's going to be it for this review. I'll be back soon with episode 24, Dweller in the Depths. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Take it away, Bumblebee.
Bumblebee out.
And I might know